Hello everyone, Tactical Glitch here. It's been a while since our last battle replay, and today we have a peculiar one sent in by General Spotify, a brave soul who does not bring magic in most of his battles, including this one playing as Tzeentch, the magic faction. That's right, Karos only has his abilities and items. No spells and no army abilities for Tzeentch, going up against Pasha's Norscan army. For the army builds here, Tzeentch going with, well, just Karos Fate Weaver and his abilities items, no spells, no magic. Supporting him is a bunch of flyers here, Chaos Furies, Changebringers, two of them packing a lot of firepower, Screamers of Tzeentch, and a single Cockatrice. So there are two flyer monsters in the skies, allowing them to double team on the enemy single entities and whatnot. Also Aeson the Fallen, a third monster melee piece, a powerful one indeed, with Mortis Engine and a mini Fate of Buna, the Maelstrom of Change. Now, on the ground forces for infantry, a bunch of blue horrors providing some minor fire support, and that's it for the Tzeentch army build. On the other side of the battlefield, for the Norscans, a lot of mobility in the form of murder horses, riders of the mighty serpent, a bunch of throwing axes, murder horsemen, a beast of Tashna, and a bunch of ice wolves far back. In the skies, a single chimera, and leading the army is Sael the Faithless, supported by some familiar warriors with a front line of murder bearmen and some murderers with great weapons. That's it for the army builds, I think, and let's get the battle started. The armies deployed quite far away from each other, so we're skipping the first marching phase of the battle here, just waiting for the armies to close in. And on top of that, Karos does not have blue fire spamming, so no spell kiting, just him pushing up and dropping a Void Pendulum to slow down Sael the Faithless magical regeneration there, just stopping that winds of magic from gathering. Now we are going back to fast forward because the Norscans are seemingly taking their sweet time before approaching the Tzeentch army, seeing that there is a lot of firepower on the side of the magical chaos faction that has no spells today. And yeah, as the Chimera closes in, the first volley of blue horrors opens up onto him, while the Changebringers are also moving in to try and get a volley off to delete this powerful monster. But unfortunately, the stagger on the flying monster made that volley mostly missed as they were aiming, well, just random places on the side. Now, the Marauder Bearmen are braving the storm of firepower from the Tzeentch army, the Blue Horrors, Warp Flames, and of course the Changebringers, burning down that line of Marauder Bearmen, while the Chimera taking very minimal damage. Karos is dropping onto the ground now, trying to get some of these murder horsemen dealt with, while the blue horrors also firing into them. On the far side there, bearmen charging into the blue horrors. There's no doubt that they will demolish the line of blue horrors, though the blue horrors do have quite a bit of numbers and will take some time before they go down. Chimera going after the Changebringers, but this is where the Cockatrice and the Furies comes in to shine, pinning down the single flyer from the Norscan army, while the blue horrors are getting slaughtered by ice wolves and bearmen alike. And you can see the Chimera is actually not enjoying this battle at all, as even the Screamers are joining the fight with their anti-large attacks. Murder horsemen are taking quite a bit of damage from the flamethrowers and from the blue horrors firepower. With the Marauder Horsemen retreating, they have turned their gaze upon those familiar warriors. The chain lightning wrecked the blue horrors and friendly fired the bearmen, while the familiars got absolutely demolished by the Changebringers' flamethrowers. The familiar warriors take a lot more missile damage once their leadership drops below half, and losing out on that from the miss ability down to only 25% missile resistance. And now the Changebringers turn their gaze back onto the returning enemy Marauder Horsemen. While over here, Aeson the Fallen is just enjoying the fight, chilling in the middle of a bunch of bearmen and the familiar warriors with great weapons. Familiar warriors with great weapons, personally, I think it is a pretty bad unit. The melee stats are pretty mediocre at only 30 melee attack baseline with 25 bonus versus large, which is pretty decent against normal monsters, but normal monsters only. This is Aeson the Fallen, and he does have 50 melee defense thanks to the Regiment of Renown status, keeping it quite alive and well in the middle of those anti-large monsters, while the familiars are really struggling to damage this big meaty single entity. Over here, the double flyer from the Tzeentch army has dropped onto the ground there. They are not going to terrify the murder bearmen, but it looks like they are probably going after the landed Chimera, who is going back up to the skies to harass these Changebringers again. Changebringers, of course, wisely back away, while these Changebringers get a volley onto Sael, doing some decent damage, but also they're already running low on ammo. This is the biggest weakness of Changebringers outside of their glass cannon status, their lack of ammo. Can't really sustain fire over a long period of battle. Over here, Azen the Fallen is still chilling in the middle of a bunch of enemy monsters and infantry and whatnot, while the Changebringers, running out of ammo, decided to jump into melee to fight some Ice Wolves. That's very brave of them. While in the skies there, Chimera continues to pressure the Changebringers down to 5 models, still being hunted. Probably another model is going to go down there from the attack of the Chimera, but this is where the double flyer, Kairos and the Cockroaches comes into play, hunting down this lone Chimera in the skies. The Norscans simply do not have any assets to save that Chimera. No flyers, the missiles are scattered or very much depleted, unable to secure their flyer. Even Tzeentch is backing away, leaving the Chimera to die, although the Marauder Horsemen are coming back, throwing some axes into the enemy flyers. Not that it does much against the flying blob, but back to the center though, it's kind of a hammer and anvil, as the Changebringers were being the anvil penning down Ice Wolves, and the hammer of the Azen the Fallen absolutely terrifies these poor Norscan Ice Wolves. And seems like Tzeentch, without magic support, is still managing to get an advantage in terms of balance of power. It's still very close in anyone's game though, because all these firepower, the Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes and javelins, can still be a big threat to Azen the Fallen, and of course the double flyer there. Cockroaches not being an excellent melee combatant, and Kairos Fate Weaver's, well, his melee stats are absolute crap. An interesting use of the Wind Blast in Tzeentch's toolkit, the Windstruck ability contact effect, slowing down his pursuers, allowing him to back the hell out of that combat, dropping in even a Chain Lightning, probably expecting him to go down anytime, so just trying to squeeze out as much winds of magic as possible and do as much damage as possible before he goes down. But unfortunately, all the flyers just back the hell out of theirs, and there are no damage from that Chain Lightning. Right now, the throwing axes, despite doing some good damage to Azen the Fallen, is running into a problem. The Changebringers are still alive with 4 models, but these 4 models can still pack some heavy punch. A single volley would be enough to rout off any approaching enemy cavalry, which are very tattered at this point. Right now, the tiniest bit of damage, even a gust of wind, would be enough to send those Norscan units into rout. A bunch of Marauder Bearmen return and are going after the capture point, but they do not want to take the fight against Azen the Fallen alone. The problem is that all the important assets are either depleted or just away from battle. The Marauder Bearmen over here are tying down the Cockroaches and Kairos Fate Weaver with some familiar great weapons coming in to slap them down, while Azen the Fallen is just still chilling around the capture point. Unfortunately, he does not have the capture weight to take hold, so the Norscans still are in hold of the capture point, getting that victory tickets, pushing their army slowly towards victory. But we'll see if Tzeentch can take back the capture point there, as the Changebringers have been dismantled and sent back to the war. Marauder Bearmen now tying down the Azen the Fallen, but also getting drained to death by it. So here comes Tzeentch the Faithless, trying to do some. Oh wow, that is a painful hit. A huge chunk of HP taken out in that slap. That's like what, a quarter of his HP, and then follow-up slap from Azen the Fallen as well. Yeah, Tzeentch the Faithless needs to back out of there and let the Marauder Bearmen do all the fighting. A Wind Blast though, slowing down Azen the Fallen, allowing the throwing axes to catch up and drop some more missiles into the fray. The Mutila's health is getting low, but here comes the Changebringers reinforcing with only 4 models left. They've been killing enemy infantry, killing enemy familiars, and killing skirmishers as well, and keeping some alive into this late of a game is absolutely crucial for the Tzeentch army to win. They are the best bet to kill off those Marauders with throwing axes and javelins and deny the enemy from using that missiles to chip down Azen the Fallen, a very important bastion of strength in this kind of late game scenario to deal with all the enemy infantry and cavalry. As the double melee flyers, the Cockroaches and Kairos Fate Weaver are really struggling in the fight, even against some very tattered familiar warriors and Marauder Bearmen. Kairos has returned to this side of the battlefield, scaring away those Norscan Ice Wolves with the help of Azen the Fallen in tow as well. Marauder Bearmen also getting scared away. They're not terrified though, since they are immune to psychology, but still, they're just so depleted that just mere presence of the enemy is enough to send them back running. Now, the Changebringers are almost out of ammo. One more volley left and they're probably done for. Not that there are any great targets for them to fire at, so I guess that's why they're trying to fire at the familiar warriors. being the most expensive thing left on the battlefield outside of Sael, of course, and the anti-large can still do some damage to Azen the Fallen and the flying single entities. At the same time, the Norscan army is just gathering all their depleted units back to the center of the battlefield. Azen the Fallen is now holding the capture point, but he is only one lone single entity, and it's taking him forever to capture the point with that capture strength, and the flyers of course do not count. You can see this victory location is very slowly moving into the hands of the Norscans, while the Changebringers, the flyers are all just floating around trying to send away any infantry that tries to contest this capture point against Azen the Fallen. Because the Norscan can still definitely keep a hold of the capture point if they can send their infantry in and tussle with Azen the Fallen. Not that they're gonna stay too long in there, but still, that's a possibility. Anyways, Ice Wolves are jumping onto Kairos Fateweaver, who were trying to rout off tattered units. But at the same time, he is now frostbitten and slowed down to a halt. These Ice Wolves can just stay on to Kairos Fateweaver, who is absolutely terrible in melee combat with only 25 attack now that he's extremely exhausted and suffering a melee penalty from it. Murder Bearmen still fighting and are dragging down both the Cockatrice and the Changebringers. The Cockatrice speed debuff doesn't do anything at this point, and the low armor means that it actually lost to the Murder Bearmen and shattered away. But here comes Azen the Fallen here, slapping those Murder Bearmen left, right, and center, and also dropping in a disorientated effect, lowering their melee stats even further after the exhaustion, and that's one shattered Murder Bearman. There are still some comparatively healthy Murder Bearmen and Ice Wolf still here, trying to take down Kairos Fateweaver, but they're taking quite a while to do so, since the Chaos Chicken is quite janky to hit. Azen the Fallen jumps in, should be able to terrify those Ice Wolves away. Kairos Fateweaver karate chops Sael, routing him as well, and that's army losses. So yeah, General Spotify, the man, the myth, the legend, proving that Tzeentch does not need spells and magic and army abilities to succeed. Kairos Fateweaver coming in with no spells at all, just his abilities and items, and still leading the Tzeentch army to victory with suppressive firepower from all these Changebringers here, burning down the enemy's opposition, burning down the Familiars, burning down the skirmishing cavalry, and of course burning down the enemy infantry as well, doing substantial damage throughout the course of battle with their limited ammo. And of course the flyers cannot be neglected, not doing a whole ton of damage overall, but they are very important in keeping the Chimera at bay and making sure that the Chimera cannot hunt down the Changebringers, while the Changebringers do all the damage, shut down all those skirmishing cavalry, and then Azen the Fallen can deal with everything else on the ground, draining everything with that Mortis engine power. As for the Norscan army here, Sael didn't do much damage with the AoE spells, not a whole lot of valuable units to blast away anyways. The Chimera got heavily surrounded, hunted by all kinds of single entities and flyers, while the Familiars, they did alright, these ones. Still not able to earn back their value though, while the throwing axes and javelins, the horsemen in general, just got heavily targeted by those Changebringers without being very effective in counter-firing. Very nicely played by both players and a fairly close battle. I hope you all enjoyed this no spell, no magic Tzeentch army action. If you want to see more multiplayer action, be sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.